Senate Democrats want to make more election security information public, available to you, after a series of concerning closed-door briefings this week. After those meetings with top election officials and intel officials, Democratic senators say they were largely satisfied with the information, but they say Americans, voters, should be able to see it. New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez, he was in one of those closed-door briefings. He also serves on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He joins me now. Senator, thanks for taking the time this morning.
Good to be with you, Jim.
I know, and you know better than me, these meetings, they are classified, but just in terms of the general threat here, one of your colleagues, Senator Richard Blumenthal, he tweeted yesterday after receiving the briefing that Americans need to see and hear these reports, shocked and appalled, just left a 90-minute classified briefing on foreign malign threats to our elections, from spying to sabotage. Can you characterize the severity of the threat to the upcoming election and what we're talking about here? Is it just disinformation, or is it potential attacks on voting systems?
Well, let me just say that we saw in 2016 that Russia, put down a major bet on Donald Trump and engaging in that election in order to help President Trump, and that happened in 2016. And the reality is that we are under, I think, a very clear threat of foreign interference in our elections. Certainly in the same type of disinformation that they created in 2016. And I also feel that the reality is that sophistication of how to interfere is one that extends beyond disinformation. Whether or not they can succeed is another question, but the fact that the threat is there, I think, is incredibly important.
Your Republican colleague, Senator Ron Johnson, is in touch with a Russian-backed Ukrainian politician, Andrei Derkach, regarding, it seems, getting information that he hopes to be damaging to former Vice President Joe Biden. I wonder, given Derkach's ties to Russia, is it your view that Johnson is facilitating Russian interference in the election?
Well, I would just simply point out to you what Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer said in a letter to the FBI, a public letter, where they raised the concerns that, in fact, Congress seems to be clearly under the threat of a foreign disinformation campaign aimed at Congress itself. Yeah. And so I would think that any member of Congress, any chair or ranking member of a committee, has to hold with a high degree of suspicion information that is coming to them from individuals who, in fact, may very well be on the dole as well as directed by Russia or any other government. And so, that should send immediate alarm bells up about the truth and veracity about what they're promoting. And
that sounds like a yes. Sounds like you think Johnson might get played by Russia.
And not to, well, you might very well get played by Russia, you might get very well played by someone else, but I would just simply say that at the end of the day, one should be really alarmed and vigilant not to end up being either wittingly or unwittingly complicit in such an effort.
Let's talk about stimulus if we can. You have some talk now of reaching a deal possibly by the end of the week, but the gap seems to be fairly wide. That said, according to Politico, Republicans have offered to extend the enhanced unemployment benefit at $400, so up from the original offer of $200, but below the Democrats' desire of $600. Can you could you vote for something that is less than $600 for that enhanced benefit?
Well, I really think it's difficult to go back to New Jerseyans and to Americans and say that in the midst of a pandemic where unemployment is still raging, that in fact here's a major victory, we cut the amount that you're going to receive. Now, of course, it will depend upon the totality of an agreement. For example, there's virtually nothing in here for states and municipalities. That is critical. The very people who we needed in the midst of the pandemic, public health nurses, first responders, emergency management, and others, are on the chopping block if, in fact, we can't get this money to states. You earlier had the governor of Kentucky. I think he made a compelling case. The reality is also amazing. Zero for food for families who need food assistance, but $3 billion for a 100% tax credit on a 3-martini lunch. That is not the values and the needs of the American people.
I want to ask you about mail-in voting. The president with a somewhat revealing comment yesterday, after weeks of attacking mail-in voting across the board as corrupt. He now says it's okay in the state of Florida, where there's a Republican governor, but still suing the state of Nevada, Democratic governor there. Do you believe that this attack on mail-in voting by the president is about securing the election, or is it about gaining electoral advantage?
Oh, it's all about gaining electoral advantage. It's all about, going ahead and getting every edge and benefit, even if, in fact, you undermine the very essence of our democracy, that some people's votes in some states matter more than other people's votes in other states. If it's good enough for Floridians to vote by mail, as the president himself has in Florida, then it's good enough for New Jerseyans, it's good enough for Nevadans, it's good enough for anybody in the country. And so this should be seen for what it is, a tactical ploy to try to take advantage in a way that undermines the very essence of the sanctity of the election. And so I think it should be called out for what it is, and that's why the meeting with the Postmaster General today by Speaker Pelosi and Senator Schumer is so important, to make sure that we can get those absentee ballots to voters in a timely fashion, and they can execute their sacred right to vote without hindrance.
Are you suspicious that there's a deliberate effort by the Postmaster General and Republicans to slow down delivery of mail-in ballots so that they're not counted?
Well, I'm concerned that this Postmaster General doesn't seem to be an advocate for the Postal Service, for its employees, and for the needs of the Postal Service to meet the needs of the American people. You know, we're talking about this in an election contest and absentee, voting by mail ballots, which are, of course, critically important. But seniors depend upon the mail system to get their checks. They depend upon it to get their medicine. So we need a Postal Service that is robust and being backed by the Postmaster General, not undermined.
Senator Bob Menendez, thanks so much for joining us this morning.